You just said something so important. Do you identify as Nigerian American?
Right. So, first of all, obviously I'm a Niger boy, right? I'm a Nigerian. It's my heritage. It's my home. It's my heart. It's where my wife is. It's where my son is. I'm from Lagos. I'm from Calabar. My mom is Calabar. My dad is from Lagos. I spent most of my growing up years here, and it's where I am till today. It's where I've invested, not just from a family's perspective, but also from a business standpoint, and from a service to the community standpoint, from a connection to the community standpoint. All of that is extremely important to me. I also am grateful that I'm American as well. It's a country that I love. Actually, my parents and all of my siblings all live there till today. So I think I've been really fortunate to have the best of both worlds. So I'm fully Nigerian, but I'm also fully American. So it's just like a bonus on top, you know. Yeah. When I'm going, I don't need to wait for a visa to enter and all of that. So I'm grateful to have that dual heritage.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm doing a lot more, and I'm a lot more connected to the Nigerian side now. But I spend quite a bit of my time every year. I make sure that I go to America as well and keep that family connection very strong.
Yeah.
So both sides are important to me.
So it's so amazing to hear you say that, because I also identify as Nigerian American, but most of my entire upbringing is in America. Right? This is
we can hear it too.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And I'm also listening to your accent. I see how you when we met.
I switch back and forth.
Absolutely, you do. But I also recognize, I'm like, it's like you have this in the middle accent. It's like right there where it's like, yep, I lived in America, and yep, I lived in Nigeria.
Yes.
Versus I put on an accent when I'm here. It's because I understand that an accent is also a song a bit, right? So when you're resonating with somebody, you want to resonate as a song and be able to connect with them.
Absolutely.
So that's really amazing. But I have been in my discovery phase of what Nigerian American means to me. A big part of this trip was, how much does it translate? You know, I'm raised in a Nigerian home in America. I have an American name, but I have an Igbo middle name. I don't hear my Igbo middle name often. I see how when you introduce yourself, you always say your full name, but then you'll make a Banky. And I'll just be like, wow, that's really cool. So we both identify as Nigerian American, but how are you experiencing your dual nationalities? Are there parts where you're feeling it's harder to honor sometimes? Is it easy? Is it confusing? Do you ever think, does it translate?
So I think, I don't know that I see it as hard, or I've ever really seen it as hard, because it's always been who I am, right? So I've always been, Banky Wellington, also known as Banky. My father's nickname is actually Banky as well. So I got that nickname from him. So I've never really seen it as hard. I think where I found it hard in the beginning was when I really started recording. I was still based in the States, right? So in the beginning of my music career, I would kind of record R&B music or R&B sounding music, and then go back to being Nigerian and American. But then when I was writing, because my inspirations at the time were like, the Ushers, or, back in the day, the Boyz II Men, or R. Kelly, musically speaking, So when I started out making music, I was making music sounding like that, and I just didn't know how to infuse being a Nigerian with my art, and I struggled with that for a while. And then I met LD, who is just a legendary musician. He's kind of not really in music full time anymore. He's in business and tech and all of these other things. But at the time, he was one of the pioneers. And when I met him and I listened to what he was doing, for the first time I heard somebody being able to fuse being a Nigerian into kind of American sounds and making it something completely fresh. And that completely opened my mind up to say, oh, so I can still take, R&B or soul or pop or whatever, and just infuse enough of Nigerness into it. And then it becomes something that nobody's ever heard before. Because if it's just R&B, you have a million people in the States that can do that. But if it's Afro R&B or Afro beats or Afro pop, now you've created something that is completely unique, it's completely fresh, it's creative, it's different, it's authentic, because it's who you really are, it's who I really am. And that, I believe, what we were doing at that time, thank God, opened the doors for a lot of the younger people who have now taken Afro beats to a completely amazing level, heights that we never reached, places, platforms that we never had access to. They've taken it there. And I think, it started from the LDs and the Two-Faced Dibias and the Dibanjis and Mohits and Don Jazzy, and Wande and myself and MI and just that generation of people who took global music but infused enough of our Africanness into it to make it something different and make it special. And I'm grateful that we were able to play a tiny role in opening the doors for this new generation. When you see what David and Burna and Wiz and Kiss Daniels and Techno and even Tiwa and all of these Thames, all these amazing Nigerian artists, and you go out of Nigeria, even in South Africa with the Nasty C's and I start running into trouble if I don't name everybody. So let me just but I think it's powerful what African music represents today and what they've been able to do with it. And I'm just glad that somewhere in the foundation we were able to play a small role in just opening the door wide enough for others to come along.
Yeah, I see how you were able to experience that internally. What about externally when you were honoring your identity? I'm Nigerian American, I'm both, right? But then you're experiencing other people, other communities, friends, teachers, whatever the case is. Like, did you ever feel like in one circumstance I need to be more of this or less of this or that's always the
you just made me think of something. So when I moved back to the States and did senior year of high school and then university, especially in senior year of high school, it was a very interesting period in my life because I think people there had not been so exposed to somebody who was coming from Nigeria or from Africa. And I would get silly questions like, how did you get here? And me being the sarcastic person I was, I'd be like, I swam, and do you guys have to wrestle? I was like, I wrestled a lion for my manhood. Like I just played.
You played into it.
If you're gonna ask me a silly question, I'll give you an answer, that you're looking for. So.
But did that hurt?
I think I've always just been a very determined person, and I just always, I take my lumps on my chin and I just keep going because I had a strong sense of self and where I wanted to go. And I just saw all of those times as times that build up your character,
Even then?
I think, there are people who had gone, my sister had gone before me to the States, and I'd heard of the things that she dealt with and some of the struggles that she had. So I kind of had that mindset that no matter how bad it is, no matter how tough things are, I'm going to make it out of this and I'm going to make something of myself. So I would internalize a lot of the trials and the tough times and just use it as fuel. And I wanted to spare my parents, especially my mom, because I'd seen her, process the emotions of having a child leave home and be so far away where you have limited influence over the challenges that she's going through. So I didn't want her to go through those same kinds of emotions with me. So whenever they would ask me, I say, everything's great, but I took my lumps, but here we are. So.
Did you ever get to express yourself emotionally later? Or where was your outlet during that time? Because at that time you're sacrificing and saving your parents, which a lot of us do. That's also, I feel like it's almost rooted in the Nigerian culture in some, absolutely.
It probably is.
Like trying to shield them and protect them, and it happens so early. At least
I think what you try to find along the way is just kindred spirits, just other people who you can connect with. I think it's really important to not do life in isolation, because I think things become so much harder if you have nobody to talk to. So for me, luckily for me, my sister was there. My older brother came at the same time as I did. Even though we were in different places, there was at least somebody there. And then I reconnected with old friends. My best friend till today, who you met, my business partner. We've been best friends since we were 13 years old. And luckily for me, we were both in upstate New York. So there was always that opportunity for us to connect and hang out with him and his siblings on holidays or whatever. Just you find friends and sometimes distant relatives, just people who kind of you come from the same background, you know what you guys are all going
Yeah.
through, and
Yeah.
that ends up becoming your outlet for some of the things that you're going through. So.
First of all, having a friend that you've been friends with since you're 13
Oh yeah,
takes
that
so
was
much
massive,
growth
massive.
and like is so impactful and amazing. But at
Yeah.
the same time, you are in your 40s now.
Yeah.
So the transition from 13 to your 40s is a lot. And I'm assuming, I mean, that's a big part of how you became you, because you know, they always say, show me your friends, I'll show you who you are,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So what relationship to you has taught you the most about communication?
The relationship that's taught me the most about communication, I'd say two. One would be my best friend, who you've mentioned, because we've grown up together. I mean, we're looking at almost 30 years of being brothers, right? So there's that. But I'd say even probably maybe even slightly more than that has been my wife, my marriage, because you come into a relationship or a marriage with all of the baggage that you both have, with your way of doing things and her way of doing things, and your way of communicating, her way of communicating, your way of getting angry, her way of getting angry, your way of showing love, her way of showing love, just the differences in love languages and temperament and just life experiences. And I think that what the marriages that work come from two people who decide to intentionally work on themselves because you found somebody that's worth working for. Because nobody's perfect, right? And so it's not about perfection, it's about progression. So it's about finding somebody that you're willing to fight for and work for. And for me, and I'm not trying to be all preachy or pastoral, but I think just having God at the center of that just makes it work so much better. So for instance, with my wife, one thing she doesn't like is shouting, right? She just doesn't respond to shouting. It's like we could be arguing about something. The minute you start shouting, the point of the shout changes from what the point of the argument was to the fact that you are shouting at me. So you are already lost, okay? But I grew up in a family where, if Arsenal is playing, we're shouting. If the Super Eagles are playing, we're shouting. If we're angry, we're shouting. If we're happy, we're shouting. Like, I grew from we were very loud, but she grew up in a circumstance where it was just her and her mom, so she wasn't used to that noise, and for her, that's immediately that happens, she shuts down.
Sure.
So I had to learn to say, okay, if I can communicate the way I want or the way I'm used to, but if I want her to hear me, then I have to change that, and I learned about love languages. I didn't used to believe in all of that, when I was coming up as a reckless single man.
Wait, reckless
single man, yes. We had that era. But, as you're doing premarital counseling in church and, you're prayerfully trying to learn how to make this thing work. And I learned that my love language is acts of service. That's how I show that I care, and that's how I show that I love you, is I'll try and do things for you. So even when I was, out, turning up before I ever settled down, when we go to the club, I'm the guy making sure everybody has a drink in their cup, or do you need to use the bathroom, or do you have something to drink? Are you okay? I'm the acts of service guy, right? And so, but my wife, on the other hand, her love language is quality time and words of affirmation. But quality time is the main one, is the dominant one. And so, for instance, in 2019, when I was running for office and running the businesses and doing a bit of music and doing community service, so I was doing all of these things, and especially when you're on the campaign trail, the one thing you don't have is quality time.
Yeah.
So, there was a period, I've told this story before, where there was a bit of tension. And for people who've been in relationships, when there's like tension, where it's not like there's not been anything said, or it wasn't like somebody did something, but there's just, the air is a bit tense.
Yeah.
It's a bit tense and cold.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And I remember then very clearly.
That's such a hard time to communicate, by the way.
I was getting frustrated because I was like, I'm on the campaign trail, I'm doing community service, I'm running the business, but I'm still coming home to cook for you and waking up in the morning to make sure you have breakfast and going to the grocery store and just doing things that I love doing because that's how I show that I love you. But, the air was getting tense and, it was getting cold and, that's when the devil would get in your ear and be like, oh, she doesn't appreciate you. I mean, look how much you're killing yourself and she doesn't even care. And then this one day I'm getting ready and I just about had it. I was just like, you know what? When she feels like, throwing the ice and talking to me, no problem, I'll be here. But right now I don't send, like a Nigerian boy would say, I don't send that baby. But I'm getting ready and I remember I was getting ready and I feel like I heard God say to me, but you're speaking different languages.
Mm.
It's like somebody arguing in Igbo and the other person arguing in Greek. And you're both getting more frustrated that you're not understanding what is wrong or what's upsetting me, but you're speaking different languages. And then I remember love languages. You learned about this. Her love language is quality time. And that's the one thing you haven't been able to give. So in all of the things you're trying to save the world and be there for the family and provide and you're not giving her the one thing that lets her know that you love her.
Mm-hmm.
So in her mind, it's like, man, this guy doesn't really love me anymore or whatever. So that day I was in the bathroom, I called my office, I said, hey, I'm gonna be late, so move my schedule by like 4 or 5 hours, whatever it was. And I took my tie and my shirt off and I just went back into the room and got into bed and held her. And she just started crying because she was just like, all the tension and the bad air, everything just melted because in that moment, I showed her that, hey, I know this is what means something to you and I'm willing to sacrifice other things to do that. Mm. And I think that's what marriage teaches you if you're willing to try and if you're willing to learn and if you're willing to listen and if you're willing to put in the work. And, we're both very imperfect people, but, thank God, we have him at the center and we're able to learn these things. And, every year we get a bit better than we were the year before. So.
What a story. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. What's your love language?
Acts of service.
Okay.
Acts of service.
Okay. And that, how did you communicate that to your wife?
Oh, my acts of service. I'm an acts of service guy. I do the cooking in the house. I do the grocery shopping. Anything that we need in the house, I'll go get it or find the person who's going to fix it. Anything that's, anything that's service related, I try to do because that's how I show that I care.
So that's how you show and how you receive?
It's how I receive. I also like physical touch, which I didn't used to, but it was crazy that the year that we were getting married, so I never used to be a cuddler or anything like that, but the year that we were getting married, I had my third battle with skin cancer. And I had to have this major surgery. I had to have a couple of surgeries to properly deal with it. And in the post-surgery recovery, you really can't move. I mean, you're all strapped up for weeks at a time. And because I was so limited in motion, I started drawing strength from just being able to sit next to my wife and just, our hands are touching or our feet are touching, and just that period of just being able to depend on somebody and draw strength and love and encouragement from just that touch made physical touch like such a big thing for me.
Wow.
That now I'm soft. I'm a soft life guy. I
love soft life.
Listen, when we're in bed at the end of the day, my leg must be touching something.
Right.
Some kind of physical contact.
Yeah.
And I all of a sudden become that guy, which I never thought that I was.
Yeah. But
I think also when you find somebody that you're willing to try to do life with, you learn things about yourself.
Right.
They help you find things that you didn't even know were there. You discover things emotionally, physically, sexually. You discover things that turn you on, things that you like, things that you don't like, and I think that's part of the beauty of it is just being willing to explore,
to do that,
to do things.
Were you afraid of any of those discoveries?
No, I think they've been pretty fun. They've been pretty fun. I remember when I'll keep this a bit PG-13, when we were, when we just started, when we just got married and, doing what married people do.
Yeah, absolutely.
She asked me once, she's like, what's your spot? Like, what's your spot? I was like, I don't know. I just like to do what married people do. You know, I didn't know that I had a spot. I actually didn't know. I
love it.
And then just over time, we discovered it. And the spot is like a light switch. Hallelujah.
That is so exciting.
Yes. So, but I would never have known. Because I just, when you're living young and reckless, you're just doing the do. Like it's a lot more lust than love, but I think love helps you discover things. And I think that's the beauty of it.
Do you think first of all, you identified it as a reckless single man phase, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think everyone is entitled to a reckless single phase and needs that in order to be in a marriage a little bit more wholeheartedly, or
I think there's
not?
a danger with the reckless single phase where there's a level of addiction that you can fall into that makes being married harder, not easier. And so I think
I agree.
You have to be careful with it because you can quite easily slip into a place where you're addicted to promiscuity or pornography or both. And those things are very, very difficult to fight and to come out of, and to be able to be committed to somebody that you truly love and you truly care about. So while I don't want to come off as a prude, I think it's healthier to not be completely reckless. It's healthier to wait for who God created you to be with and then discover life with that person and have all the fun that you want, in the confines of a healthy marriage, as opposed to saying, I'm going to go the prodigal son route, which I did. But I know the demons that I had to battle and the wars that I had to fight even internally in myself to be able to come out from that and to be committed to a married relationship. It's not the easiest thing in the world. So I think young men and women have to be careful what you allow yourself to be exposed to. I mean, something which you may casually think is harmless, like porn, right? You think, I'm not sleeping around, I'm not catching any STDs, I'm not getting nobody pregnant. I'm just, it's just me by myself, every once in a while, can easily become a thing of bondage where it now, negatively affects your life going forward, especially because in porn, you're seeing a different woman every 30 seconds, right? And then now you want to spend the rest of your life with one person. You have to process, and you have to fight, and you have to pray your way through it, and all of that. And studies have shown it's just as addictive as drugs. Yeah. When you've wired your brain a certain way. So I think I would lean on the side of saying, without being overly preachy and not trying to force my own spiritual beliefs on people, I think people do have to be careful of what they expose themselves to and the road that they go on, because the further you go down that road, the longer it is to journey back. So you gotta be careful.
I love that you just brought that up, because I don't necessarily think it's about being preachy or specific to spiritual, let's say one spiritual belief. I think it's a spiritual thing regardless, right? And so however you decide to experience God on this planet, I still think how we experience our bodies, how we experience people, this is a heart thing we're talking about, right? And we're not talking about the physical way to do the heart thing. And that can be very impactful on our lives. And so I just definitely didn't expect to talk about that, but I'm so excited because I don't think we talk about it enough. I think especially in my generation, we're very much on be free, be open, be this, and that's really great to an extent, in my opinion. And I think it's nice to just hear how you feel like for someone who was I was open. And I also think that could have been easier to not be. And so even as a man, you're saying it's not particular to men or women, you're saying it's both. Absolutely.
I think that it's unfortunate that we have double standards in society, right? And that's a whole conversation on its own. But I do think, especially in today's world, that we have to have this same level of conversations and frankness with men and women, because they're both getting exposed to all kinds of things, especially from a much younger age now. there were some stories. I don't know how much you heard, but there was a story in the Nigerian news media about these kids in like secondary school, which is like junior high, and just what they had gotten up to. And I don't want to get into the specifics of it, but it's clear that kids these days are exposed to a lot more. There's so much they can stumble on just opening a phone.
Yeah.
Are you 18? Yes.
Yeah, right.
It's not it's not hard to access.
Yeah.
I think the temptations are the same. The access has just become a lot easier. So for men and women, for boys and girls, we have to have these frank conversations, and hopefully I'm learning as I go. I got a 2-year-old son, right? So I don't even know what age do I start having these conversations. I was with a friend of mine and his wife. We were visiting them in the new year, and they have a daughter that's 4 or 5 years old. And they were telling us how they had to have conversations with her about what's a bad word, what's this, what's that, because everywhere they turn, it's there. It's in the music, it's in the films, it's in the videos, it's everywhere. And, your daughter is 4 or 5 years old, she's very impressionable, and her favorite artist might be an artist that, is a bit sexual in nature. So you have to, do all you can to navigate that space. And my wife and I are prayerfully trying to figure out, how do you, because you're not going to be with your child every minute of the day, and they will go to school. And my son started school today, by the way. I'm very excited about it.
Congratulations!
First day of daycare. Yes, thank you.
Cry, not cry?
He did very good. I mean, he in the beginning, when we just walked in, the kids were in an assembly and they were like, yeah. And he was like, whoa.
I just hang on my parents.
No. So he was holding on to my neck for dear life.
Aww.
But he didn't lose it. He just kind of was a bit hesitant, and then, eventually he warmed up to it. And according to the teachers, he didn't really cry. He gave him a few no's. Do you want to do this? No. No. But he didn't lose it. So
y'all are teaching him boundaries already? He's like, I'm good. I'm going to be...
He's very assertive.
Yeah.
They say you have to be careful what you pray for. Because we prayed for all of this. And now it's here and it's like, Zaya is like, no. Boy, if you don't.
Oh my God.
No, so first day of school, we're very excited in the Wellington household.
Yeah, congratulations. That's so special. And I love hearing the different transitions you have made throughout your life, as well as seeing what your parents experienced, how it's trickled down to you as a parent, how we just identify some of the things that as young people we talk about, but you were like, okay guys, like I'm a little older now and I can say all of it doesn't really need to be said. Yeah. I really want to hone in on that, because I think that's something that I just really don't think it's talked about enough. And I want, part of human is just being able to impact people to be healthier in all ways, right? In their communication, in their interpersonal relationships, in their self-love and themselves. So I just want to identify and acknowledge what you just spoke about, because I don't think that was light, and I appreciate you for sharing. You've also talked a lot about the different identities that you hold. You are a father, you're a son, you are a husband, you are a musician, you are a businessman, you are in politics as we speak. We can go on and on. But I've also heard you talk about how you don't necessarily hold to titles, but you still carry them. So which one of your titles right now is serving your inner child the most?
Serving my inner child the most. That is a very interesting question. I don't know if it would, and maybe because I'm not so big on titles, it'd be hard to hone it to one title. I think what it is for me is the fact that I get to do what I want to do for a living. Because I think many people wake up every day and hate their jobs, and they hate having to go to work, and they hate the grind of the day-to-day life. And I think that's very tough on a lot of people. I think honestly the vast majority of people probably don't really like what they ended up having to do for a living, and sometimes you just have to make those decisions. So I consider myself extremely blessed and extremely fortunate that I wanted to be a musician, I was a musician. I wanted to be an actor, I was an actor. I wanted to be a filmmaker, and create movies and create content and create art. And when I was in secondary school, I was the head of the debate team. I loved speaking to people. I loved debating, and that's what I'm doing now as a politician. And community service has always been a big thing for me. Just serving, being a part of something that's bigger than yourself, and I do that through service to the community, through service in church. And I'm just really fortunate because I think I'm one of the small percentage of people who have just been blessed enough to do what you want to do for a living and be happy at it, and have made it, enough money to take care of yourself and take care of your family. And I think, and then having that sense of meaning and purpose where you feel like God created you for something specific and you're chasing that. And that means everything. You can't put a price on that, knowing in your heart that, man, this is what God made me to do.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's it. Everything that I do now, I was somewhat attracted to and passionate about as a child. From starting with film, music, business, I was always very entrepreneurial, from speaking, from helping, from serving, from everything that I do now as a politician, as a musician, as a filmmaker, as a businessman, as an entrepreneur, as a servant of the community. I can trace back to when I was a teenager and just caring about it and being passionate about it at that time. And I think that's what you pray for.
Yeah. That's good.
Again, I come back to what I said earlier. It's not so much about money as it is about meaning. And I think that I found meaning in life. And that's what anybody can pray for. So I'm happy.
I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
That's so good. Now, the thing about finding meaning in life is that there are a lot of steps, right? So right now we're seeing Banky in this version where you can speak to the gratitude of your journey, right?
Yeah.
But we know going through skin cancer 3 times, or being robbed, or moving, or having to figure out your Nigerian American experience, or not living with your family. All of these things are steps to figure out how to find that meaning, right? And I'm only saying that because as people are listening, I want them to hear both parts of the journey. I want them to hear, oh my God, I can be happy doing what I want. I can follow my dreams, but these are the commitments it takes to follow my dreams. So can we identify, I don't know if you have any specific stories you can definitely share, but if there's that journey, right. Because it's never one
How much
thing.
time you got?
I mean, I have time, but you're the one who's busy. Because it's like, that's a lot of things to take to go ahead and say, I followed it and it worked. Because before it worked, it didn't work. So there's a couple times you can talk about that didn't work and that you thought maybe I should give up. Maybe and that's where I want people to feel, hey, there is that story that you're going to think like, oh, I should just make a left, but keep going right. You didn't know that going right was going to get you here, but you chose to. What made you choose to?
Oh man, so I believe that great destinies, I learned this a long time ago. Great destinies require great character, but character cannot be prayed into you. Character can only be built. And it can only be built when you go through difficult circumstances that build up your character and build up your faith, and just you find the strength to keep going. And honestly, that's been the testimony for me. Is just when those tough times have come, somehow if I'm still alive at the end of it, then I'm stronger or wiser or better off for it. So you talk about experiences, you mentioned the one where I got robbed. So I moved back, so I came to Nigeria in 2007. At the time, just kind of, my sister was getting married, so I came to help out with the wedding, but I took some time off of work from my engineering company because I just wanted to see what the scene was like, And then I went back, and Valentine's Day 2008, shortly before that, I quit my job and I said I was moving back here. But in especially for anybody who's in entertainment, you start getting a little bit of fame way before you get any kind of fortune.
Woo! So, say that again. They need to remember.
The fame comes way before the fortune. And so once people start seeing you back then on TV and they start seeing a video, they start knowing who you are, and your life becomes so much more expensive just because people know who you are. But you're not yet making any kind of money to keep up with that. So that 2008 year was extremely difficult. I remember at the time, Tunde, my best friend's older brother, Shegun, who was also my business partner at the time, was kind enough to let me stay in his house. So I always had somewhere to sleep. I always had, a meal to eat, and I'm so thankful to him and his wife, Jane, for that. But it was a difficult year, like nobody's really paying you to come anywhere and sing. No, you're just there, you're arriving at the event early before the bouncers start preventing people from coming inside. You're begging.
I've slept through kitchens.
Listen,
you do what you gotta do. You do what you gotta do.
You do what you gotta do.
My God, yeah.
And so at the time, I was grinding, and then as the year progressed, I had spent everything that I had saved from my job on, videos and photo shoots and, on-air personalities and DJs and trying to promote the music, and nothing was really, taking hold. And I remember I was getting really, really depressed and sad that this thing that I dreamt about just wasn't working. It just wasn't working, and it got to the point where I was now borrowing money. I say borrowing, but I was really never paying back. But I was borrowing money from Shegun Demore. I was borrowing 5,000 naira every week to put a little bit of gas fuel in the car that he lent me. He had a small knockabout car that he wasn't using. And also to just buy airtime on the phone so I could go out and try and push my music. And I remember at the end of the 2008 year, I went to church for the overnight service. The crossover service, and I prayed to God and I said, God, 2009 has to be the year, this thing has to work. I feel like I'm where I'm meant to be, but nothing is panning out. And I was struggling. And I was leaving the crossover service and I got accosted by armed robbers who, took me, roughed me up, put me in the back of my car and basically kidnapped me and drove me around to rob other people, and there's a gun in my face, and that story is on the internet.
It is, so but just hearing you express it, it's like...
So people can go but it was one of the worst nights of my life. Oh. And I'm sitting there and they say in Yoruba to themselves, so we went and they robbed another car, and I'm starting to think that, if the police come, they'll open fire on us and say they killed 5 armed robbers. They don't know one of us is a hostage. So it was a rough evening, and then I heard them say to themselves, first sorry, I'm getting the story mixed up. Okay. So then I heard them say to themselves that the guy who was driving said to the one who was sitting, to the guys who were sitting beside me, because I was in the middle and there was somebody here, and they're all strapped up. And I shouldn't be saying this on TV, on Revolt, because then now you're going to scare people off from coming to Nigeria. It's fine. It's not that bad. It was a bad experience, but it's really... Right. You see what you made me do?
No, we're
going to discourage people from coming back.
I'm here. We're here, guys.
It's fine.
But dangerous things happen everywhere. Let's say that.
Listen.
Dangerous things happen everywhere.
Listen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he says to him in Yoruba, "Are you done? Let's take him to Aja and kill him there." So up until that point, I was like, you feel like you're having an out of body, the shock. You're just kind of watching what is going on. You feel like you're watching yourself.
Right.
But when I heard that, I was like, okay, no, we need to have some conversations. This is not how this story is going to end. So I snapped out of it and I started trying to appeal to the guys in the backseat. I'm like, big bro, this guy probably was my age or whatever. So I said, which means like, big brother, please, you don't need to do that. And he's like, shut up, I'll shoot you here. So I turned to the other guy and I said, "Bros, please, let me out." And he goes, I know. And then I said to him, because I said at the time a little bit of fame comes before fortune. So I started saying to him, I'm like, but you know me. Like if you look at my face, you know me, you recognize me. And he says, "From where?" I said, "Oh, I'm a musician." He says, "You're a musician?" I said, "Yes." He said, "On Woloko, like what song did you sing I started naming the singles I had released that year. So I said Ibute Meta and Capable. I said, oh, Mr. Capable. I used to go by Mr. Capable as a nickname.
Mm-hmm.
I said, you don't know Mr. Capable? He's like, oh, I know Mr. Capable. I said, I'm Mr. Capable. He's like, Mr. Capable. I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay, sing, Akori. So I start singing in the car.
Oh,
he's got a gun in my face. Best free show I've ever done in my life. And then so he's like, they're all a bit drugged up, and stuff. So you can kind of see in the drug-filled haze that he's starting to recognize me. And at some point I was just like, you know what? I don't need to be talking to these guys. I need to be talking to God because, this, I went to church. Okay?
I just got back.
I was coming from a cross, like, we need to discuss this. So, and that's when you remember the prayers your mom teaches you, right? So I started saying Psalm 91, which was a prayer for protection that my mom had taught me, years ago. So I started saying, we that dwell in the secret place of the Most High shall abide in the shadow of the Almighty. Will say the Lord, you are a refuge and a fortress, our God, you do we trust. Surely you deliver us from this. And I'm just saying it, and then I get to a point and I see the gun, and then I start again. We that dwell in the secret place of the Most,
So what happened after the singing?
I just started praying. I just put my head down and started praying.
Okay.
And then he goes, and then he nudges me and he goes, Mr. Capable. And I look up and he says, Farabale, like, calm down, we're not gonna kill you. I just went back and continued my prayer. We that doing it.
We don't know what you're
So eventually, so he kind of gets into a back and forth with the driver and he says, no, we're not taking you to Ajah, let's go to this place. And I drive into some uncompleted building area. There was a lot of things that were under construction. And then they pull over and he goes, do you want your car? I said, no, you can have it. I just, because by then they're taking my money, my phones, my necklace, my cap, my shoes, like they're just, done what they needed to do. So he goes, no, don't worry that we can connect where we're going from here. So he takes the key from the driver and he tosses it behind me and says, enter your car and keep going. And so I didn't want to turn around to look for the key in the sand because I didn't want them to shoot me in the back of my head. So I was starting to kind of back up to keep them in my sights. And then he goes to me in Yoruba, he goes, I've told you to enter your car and be going, and you're still looking at me. If you want me to make noise here, I can make noise. My sister, I turned around, I said, where's
the key?
Let me, I don't know why I'm here talking to it. So I drive home, obviously having spent the last, hour or thereabouts just going through this horrid experience. And I saw Shegun on Sunday and I was like, this is what happened. And they're like, oh, thank God you didn't get shots. You're still fine, don't worry, you'll be fine. And then the next day, the caretaker of Shegun's house, his son who we would normally send on errands, took my car, because it was New Year's Day, nobody was going anywhere, took my car, got drunk, this same car that I got robbed in, scaled over a gutter and lodged the car in a neighbor's wall. So now my only means of transportation is gone. I'm broke, I'm depressed, I've just been robbed, I've just been staring down the barrel of the gun. The car is essentially totaled.
And this is January 2nd.
This was January 1st, 2009. And I was just like, what kind of... And then you start hearing, when your mom was telling you, don't go to Nigeria, stay here. So you start hearing, replaying all of those conversations like, man, who sent me to come and say, I want to do all of this? But thank God, after that, I tell, whenever I tell the story, I always try to make sure that I say, the good thing about hitting rock bottom is that there's nowhere else to go but up. So if you've hit rock bottom, then it's not such a bad thing because, if you hit rock bottom and you don't die, then live another day and try again and just fight again. And God bless Shegun and Tunde. And that's why I said you can't do life in isolation. You need to have people that you can talk to. Well, we picked up the pieces and we said, okay, the last album last year didn't work, so we're gonna go back in the studio and, Shegun had to help me borrow money to pay for a producer, and I worked with Kobam Zasukwa, who is just an amazing friend and brother and producer of mine now. But then it was, one of the first times I was working with him. But we started making songs like Lagos Party and Strong Thing, and songs did what I was telling you before, which is infusing Nigeria into R&B or pop or whatever. And the rest is history. And we went from there, we had a bit of success. finally, and then I set up the label, and then we found some artists and some producers and a DJ and a sound engineer and, you know, executives, people who have now gone on and done so much more than I ever could have dreamed of.
Yeah.
But it all came back to that moment of character building to say, do you throw in the towel now, or do you fight a bit more? Sometimes that's all that separates people who make it from those who don't, people who live their dreams from those who don't. Just the ability to find some way to keep hoping and to keep trying and to keep believing, and to just not give up on yourself and what you think that God has placed inside of you to do. And that's the story.
Every time people see somebody in success, they think, how can
They
you
don't know
relate
the
to
story.
me because you're successful?
Yeah.
And I really think it's important
Yeah.
to connect the human experience,
Absolutely.
to connect how many parts of the experience get us to that next part.
Absolutely.
And so again, I think just sharing both sides, again, you're so beautiful in your gratitude, but you also were beautiful in, okay, God, what's the next step in 2009 and 2008 and what's next?
Mm-hmm.
And even in that moment, even though it didn't feel good then, you still chose to keep going. And through a story like that, that's a big one.
Yeah.
That's a big one. I don't
Thank
think
God.
everyone's going to be able to say that. Yeah, I'm looking through my keys. That's not going to be everybody's story, but I'm grateful you were here to be able to experience the other side of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm grateful too.
Yeah, you're welcome. So we have a segment on the show called Honest Gems, and I'm going to do a quick Honest Gem. So think rapid fire, but one sentence answer if you can.
Okay.
Okay. What do they not really tell us about being a multi-hyphenate creative?
That you will be broke for a long time before it works out.
Great answer.
Yeah.
What do they really not tell us about how children change a marriage?
What they not tell us about how children change a marriage? That you have to be intentional about keeping the marriage fresh and beautiful, because children, if you let them, they'll take all the love you have and all your attention, and you'll ignore your partner. So you have to be intentional about that.
That's good. What do they not tell you about transitions in your career? What I love about your experiences, first of all, you're a very young guy who has experienced multiple titles. I'm just using the titles to say these are different career paths, these are different add-ons, and now you're in a completely different space, which I know you've identified and said that you're leaving music, but is leaving music really mean leaving music, or does it mean putting it on hold?
So
That's a
I heard
separate
that artists never retire; they just stop when they have nothing left to say. And I think that resonates with me. So I don't know that I will ever leave completely. So, and that's the beautiful thing about being a creative. You can, even if you're not the person that's going on tour and shooting the music video, you can write, you can release music, you can help somebody else. You know, I'm working with my wife now. She's just starting out her music career. So I don't know that I will ever leave completely, and I'll still probably have enough to say just based on the experiences that I'm living now, that I'll always just do a project. Like I put out the bank statements last year, which is a project I truly, truly love. So I don't know if I'll ever leave completely, but I do think that, like you said, life is about seasons. And this is a season of my life where it's clear to me that I'm meant to be in politics. It's clear to me that I'm meant to take these experiences from being a businessman, from being an entrepreneur in film and music and all of these things, and from my education and just my years of experience and the way God has blessed me and opened doors for me, and taking that knowledge to put it towards our government space, and trying to do things differently as far as being in government goes. So in this season of my life, and I really think for the rest of my life, that will take preeminence over everything else. But that's not to say that those things will be dead and gone. It just means that they take a bit of a backseat while I focus on this one.
So what do they really not tell us about transitioning in your career?
What do they not tell you about transitioning? That transitioning can be difficult and beautiful at the same time. Difficult and beautiful at the same time. Going into politics is probably the hardest thing I've ever done, and I've done a lot of hard things, but it's also, without a doubt, the most inspiring thing I've ever done. So it's that dichotomy, that mixture of,
highs and lows,
Yeah.
and all of that.
And letting both exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the last thing you forgave yourself for the first time?
Man, that's an interesting question. The last thing I forgave myself for the first time. I don't know how to answer that. The last thing I forgave myself for the first time. I think when you, and I know you said I should make it in one sentence.
Oh no, this one is all you.
Okay.
This one is you. You can explore this.
The last thing I forgave myself for the first time. I think for a lot of my life as an adult, in the things that I've kind of found in the spaces that I've found myself in, a lot of times you're the person that people go to for help or advice or assistance. But I think that the more that I've gone into this service to the community space, you realize that there's more need than you can ever take on. And it's very difficult when you're used to being that person, but now there's so many more people. If you check my bank statements, the most frequent thing you will see is hardship assistance, hospital bills, school fees, this, that, and you do the best you can. But I think I had to learn to be okay with not being able to do everything, because nobody can do everything.
Yeah.
And I had to almost kind of process forgiving myself and just letting it go, to say, listen, one thing I can guarantee is that I will always do the best that I can. And I'll always give all that I have to give. But once that is done, I have to be okay with not being able to do certain things. And there's sometimes people come to you with something, they don't know the headaches and the pain and what you are dealing with, and you don't share that, right? But being okay with saying, hey, I'm sorry, I just can't, or I can't right now.
Yeah.
And even just something as simple as your schedule. Because I'm such a, like I said, I'm a community service guy. I'm a service-oriented person. I'm an acts of service person. People see that, and so people always want to use you, or want to work with you, or have this project, or have this charity, or have this, or have that. And I used to find it so hard to say, no, I can't. I'm sorry, I'm stretched thin. I used to find it so hard to do that. So I would literally work myself to the bone, to the point where I would fall sick, because I've just allowed myself to be pulled in a million different directions. And I think, and God used my wife to teach me to say, listen, you have to learn to say no, and you have to learn to make time to rest. And yes, some people may be disappointed because you couldn't do everything, but the world will keep spinning, Yeah. People will find a way. So you do the best you can, but you have to make time for yourself, for your mental health, for your physical health. And just, I think for me, that's probably the answer. I don't know if I
so good. No, you did, because
was
finding out that you can only do so much, and that your value wasn't trying to be everything. You gotta process that. You gotta process that. I think that was so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
No, pleasure.
Banky Wellington, everybody.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
wow.
ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you
been
so
fun.
much for being on Human to Human, for being a part of the Human to Human family. This was such a beautiful expression of, again, identity and transitions, and I think that's a big part of our human experience. And I'm excited that you were able to share your version of that, and I hope that inspires you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure you tune in to Human for another episode. See you soon.